Welcome. I am Lucinda Curran, your host for the Environmental Sensitivities Symposium, a world first event. And today I have the pleasure of introducing you to Ashok Gupta. Hello Ashok, how are you?
Hi Lucinda, I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Fantastic, and very excited to be talking to you today.
I'm very excited to be involved in this symposium. Sounds very, very interesting.
I'm pleased. I'm so pleased. So tell us, what is the work that you do?
Okay, well, a bit about myself. So to go back to the beginning, I basically suffered from chronic fatigue syndrome, sometimes known as ME, many years ago when I was at university. And at the time, it was a very, very difficult time, and I had to actually go down a year at university and had to really struggle through with my exams and managed to get through. And then I went along a long process to where I am now in terms of I've set up a clinic to treat people with ME and chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, and obviously MCS is one of my specialisms as well. So at the moment I run a clinic in London and actually in fact all over the world. We have clients all over the world where we treat people with MCS, all kinds of sensitivities, but especially chemical sensitivities. And we have practitioners all over the world as well who are able to work with patients. And as you may know, we have a home study course as well, because we found that we were treating maybe 10, 20, 30 patients at our clinic each week, but that wasn't really very many people given the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who suffer from these conditions across the world. And so we decided to make it into a home study course with practitioner support and webinar support so that wherever you were in the world you could have access to this treatment at a reasonable price.
And so with your journey through chronic fatigue syndrome, that would have been quite difficult to work through. How did you manage to get through?
Yes, it was an incredibly difficult time, and I didn't have it to the extent of being bedbound, but I certainly on days was housebound. And that was obviously a very difficult time for me, trying to succeed at university, to get on with my degree, and trying to just live a normal life whilst feeling absolutely awful. I mean, I describe it as the worst day of flu times 10. Just feeling, physically and mentally exhausted, having to crawl to the bathroom. I had it, moderately severely myself, and I realised that there weren't many answers out there, and I would have to start looking for my own answers, as many people do, and going on a journey of self-discovery. And I researched a lot into the brain neurology of emotion, because the brain neurology of emotion and reactivity of the brain was it was a science in its infancy at that particular time, early to mid-90s. So it was interesting to try and make links and understandings and fill in the gaps as to why I believe our brains are responding in an inappropriate way. And so after that research, I managed to get myself 100% better, and I have been 100% better for 16, 17, 18 years now. And with that understanding, I wrote a medical paper, so a paper on the brain neurology of CFS, and that got published. And from then on, I set up a clinic to treat other people with that disorder. And obviously, I understood very quickly that with CFS, there were many other crossover conditions. So people often had pain, so aspects of fibromyalgia, people often had allergies, and of course, many people had multiple chemical sensitivities. So I was very intrigued to understand the basis behind multiple chemical sensitivities. And so then I did more research into MCS as well, and understood and believed that actually very similar neurological pathways were involved in MCS, given that there were so many crossovers between the other conditions. And so we were treating, many patients at our clinic, but we then, as I said, decided that we wanted to spread this information more widely, and then we decided to publish a home study course, which was published in 2007. And we have extra MCS videos and modules to support the application of the treatment for MCS. And since then, we've had a couple of small studies published, and a study that we did on chronic fatigue syndrome, which was published in 2010, found that 2/3 of patients reached an 80 to 100% recovery after 1 year, and a third of patients actually reached what we call a 90 to 100% recovery, and 90% of patients made some kind of improvement overall. So it was a very good study, but obviously wasn't conducted by an independent third party. So we then decided to launch our own independent study. So at the moment we're looking to raise funds for an independent study on CFS and fibromyalgia, and we're looking to launch that study next year with about 150 patients. So that will be a nice large study to finally prove what we feel is the effectiveness of this treatment. So yes, it's been quite a journey over the last couple of decades, I must admit, but I'm very grateful to have had, gone through what I went through, and it's been a very rewarding process, and I've understood a lot about myself and a lot about what makes these conditions occur in the first place.
And I love what you just finished with, because I actually believe that having any form of environmental sensitivities, and I include fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue, multiple chemical sensitivities, electrohypersensitivity, all of that, and Lyme disease, they're all under that same umbrella. But I believe if you experience environmental sensitivities, it's a blessing. So I love that you found it that way as well.
Oh, for sure. And one of the main ways that we can help people really take a step forward with a condition is, rather than seeing it as their enemy and seeing it as something which is this horrible thing attacking their body, or they just need to get rid of it as quickly as possible, which creates a huge amount of fear and uncertainty and creates even more problems, it's looking at it in the opposite way, which is, is there something that I can learn from this? And actually the process of recovering is a journey of understanding more about our own minds and how we can influence and control our own minds. And the way I describe it is, it's like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. That there's a story of a man walking through a forest, and he sees a little butterfly trying to struggle out of its cocoon. And so he picks up a knife and he rips open the cocoon to allow the butterfly to get out, and he thinks he's being very generous, and he says, "Right, butterfly, I want you to fly away." But the butterfly tries to flap its wings and falls to the ground. And the moral of the story is that actually the process of struggling out of the cocoon and being able to fly was the process of growth and strengthening for the butterfly. And in the same way, recovering from these conditions is the process of becoming stronger mentally, physically, emotionally, and is a journey of intensive growth, I believe.
That's a fantastic analogy.
Yes, it's worked for many people. When they look at it that way, their whole approach to the condition changes, and they realize that it's not just, let's find a pill that stops this happening anymore, but it is a whole journey of moving forward, overcoming things about ourselves. And that's not to say that in any way I believe this condition is psychological. It's not a psychological condition, as we know. MCS is a real physical condition, but there are aspects of it where we ourselves can begin that process of growth and move forward.
I think that's a really good point to make. I think a lot of people who don't quite understand about the amygdala retraining, they think that what people are saying is you're making it up, but you're not making it up. It's the component that we've got control over that we can change, and that changes how we experience it as well.
Right, and that's exactly how I see the condition, that we don't have direct control over our immune system. We don't have direct control over our hormonal system, but we have indirect control through the aspects of our brain that we can influence. And by influencing those aspects we do have an element of control over, we then begin to influence the immune and the hormonal changes in the endocrine system in the body as well.
It's fascinating. And can you tell us too, why are you so passionate about doing this work?
I'm passionate because I see the suffering of so many hundreds of thousands of people out there who have this condition. I mean, when you have something like MCS or CFS or fibro, your whole life is turned upside down, and that's not to, exaggerate. That really is how it is experienced by many patients. And so for me, that kind of suffering is intense. And if there's anything that I can do to help people move forward through that, then I will do, my best to do that, because I know myself firsthand how it can affect your life and mean that you sometimes can't work anymore, that you can't have the friends and relationships anymore. The quality of life, it has been shown, has been sometimes even worse than people with, latter stage cancer in terms of quality of life. And so if I can just help a few people get their lives back, get their health back, then that in itself is a reward. And obviously, actually, in fact, we've helped thousands of people get better. And that's, for me, yes, it is that feeling, that knowing that I've helped someone, move forward with their lives and get their health back, and nothing can, for me personally, can be more rewarding than that.
It's lovely to hear someone talking about the quality of life being affected rather than just all the symptoms that people experience, because it is a really holistic, all of these conditions are really holistic in terms of the way our lives change because of them.
Yes. It's, and I think that the way it affects our minds, the way it affects our bodies, the way it affects our whole way of looking at life, it is a whole mind-body experience having this condition, and therefore it makes sense that the way that we recover from it is also a mind-body approach.
Absolutely. And the work that you do in your program and what you teach people in terms of recovering is not only about the brain side of things, but you do more as well with it, don't you?
Yes. So our approach, many people who don't know much about our program believe that we are doing some kind of psychological intervention, but actually when you use our program, we approach it from many different angles. So we look at the diet angle, we do look at how much avoidance in terms of what we avoid and what we don't avoid. But then we have the main amygdala retraining, so the brain retraining aspects of it. We also incorporate brain retraining within meditation and meditative techniques. We also look at pacing, and we look at lifestyle, and we look at non-symptom patterns. So what we mean by that is our psychology based on things nothing to do with the condition, but our general approach to life and how we can relax the nervous system in general. And so the main crux of the program is brain retraining to stop these MCS reactions. But allied to that and to support that retraining, we look at so many different other factors in someone's life as well.
And I think that's where and why you get such a good success rate. Yes,
I believe so, because we could do the main retraining, but if someone is highly anxious about something going on in their lives right now, then that can compromise the ability of the body to heal. And we know that obviously every physical condition has a psychological component, and every psychological condition has a physical component. And so we have to treat the whole person rather than treating an isolated factor. And this comes down to the way we are traditionally trained in medicine in modern times, which is the reductionist approach. A doctor looks at the body like he looks at a car, like how a car mechanic looks at a car. So if there's something wrong with the brake lights, they'll fix the brake lights. If there's something wrong with the accelerator pedal, they'll fix the accelerator pedal. If there's something wrong with a component in the engine, they'll fix that component. But our bodies don't work like that, because our bodies are controlled by the nervous system, and the nervous system is one integrated system, with the brain being the head of the nervous system. And so one little change in one aspect of the brain will change the entire body. And one little change in an isolated part of the body can change the entire brain. So if you give it an analogy, if you have a paper cut, it's just a tiny little cut on your finger, but if it intensely hurts, it affects your whole mind and body. So the whole system is one holistic system reacting to our environment, or responding to our environment. So we have to treat the whole system and the way it interacts with our environment. Just to add to that, one of the things that really helps my patients is realizing that modern medicine makes a split between psychology and physiology. So we have medicine and we have psychology. But that is an artificial separation. The brain makes no separation like that whatsoever. Instead, the brain says, what is it that is going to help me survive? Yeah? How can I increase the longevity of this person's survival? The brain is here to help us survive. And so it responds to our environment based on what we call defense mechanisms. So the brain has lots of defense mechanisms. So if you touch a hot plate, your hand suddenly moves off the hot plate, because that is the survival instinct. It is the defense mechanism of the body looking to help you survive. The brain makes no separation between physiological and psychological responses. They are all put together as defensive responses, which is why if you put your hand on the hot plate and you suddenly move your hand off, That is a physical survival instinct that your brain has. But at the same time, do we or do we not also feel a sensation of fear? We do. So a sensation of fear, or a sensation of at least mild concern, always coincides with any defensive responses that our mind engages in. As an example, if we have a cold or flu, it is well known that psychologically we start feeling more vulnerable. We are more emotional at times when we have a physical illness. We also know that the levels of anxiety or the levels of emotionality that someone's experiencing during pain has a massive impact on the sensations of pain that people experience. And so what we're saying is that in MCS reactions, there are many layers to that reaction. There's a physiological layer of reaction. There's an immune layer of reaction. There's a hormonal layer of reaction. And there's also a very slight, subtle feeling of vulnerability in that defensive response. And that's all packaged together as an MCS response. And we can't control the first three, so the physiological response, the immunological response, and the hormonal response. We have no direct control over that. But that slight feeling of vulnerability that comes with the response, that slight feeling of concern right through to feeling scared or feeling afraid of the reaction, that's the only bit that we have control over. And in that package of defensive responses, if we are able to retrain that aspect of the response using very specific, unique tools, then the other parts of the response also being ratchet down. And that is the underlying basis of our MCS retraining.
It's fantastic, and everybody, if you'd like to learn more, Ashok Gupta will be a speaker at the Environmental Sensitivity Symposium. You can find out more at environmentalsensitivityssymposium.com.